just planning 2025 and thinking, how can I improve my work environment so I have a happy, engaged and productive team? I'm an experienced team coach and I will share 12 strategies in 3 categories how to improve your team and make it happy, engaged and productive. 12 strategies for successful teams. Category 1. Set up your team for a successful journey. Category 2. Handle the most common problems your team will face. Category 3. Helping your team to go from good to great. And each category will have 4 strategies and actionable ideas you can immediately use in your team on a daily, weekly or monthly basis. So category 1, set up your team for a successful journey. And the first 2 strategies are from Google's Aristotle project, where they researched what makes high-performance teams at Google. And the first one is psychological safe environment. So first, what's the definition of psychological safe environment? It's the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated if they are speaking up with ideas, questions or concerns, or even mistakes. So how do we create those kind of psychological safe environments? I've done an ebook with 45 ideas how you can do that on a daily, weekly and monthly basis, and I will share the link below. So let's pick just a few. On a daily basis, have healthy conflicts in your team because they will bring you on the next higher level. On a weekly basis, check in your personal collaboration cards of your colleagues and see what makes them tick, what they love, what they don't like, so you can improve the trust and the social connection in your team and build a psychological safe environment. And on a monthly basis, review your team values or your team rules you have in place so you know how your team best collaborates and works together. Second is the topic equal voice. So Google figured out that equal voice is really important. So how at the end of the day, everyone in the team had almost the equal time of speaking time. Here are also some tips. So listen first, speak last. That you can learn or do on a daily basis. Or I love to do write first, speak last as well. So first have everyone write something down and then we're discussing and talking about that what the people wrote down. On a weekly basis, introduce planning poker cards or t-shirt size cards where you have a communication tool available in your hand and get out the intrinsic knowledge of the people by gamifying your estimation sessions or for business value or for effort estimations. And then on a monthly basis, introduce, for example, delegation poker cards where your team will learn how to actually make things accountable for themselves and let them decide decisions which have to be made, maybe not by you as a team leader, but the team members can do them. And that's also improving the equal voice in the team. Third, prioritize your work. Did you know that 75% of work should not be done? 30% because it's against the goals and the visions of the organizations, and the remaining 70%, they are 2/3 of the things you are doing, building, is actually not or rarely used by the end customers or users. So focus on the remaining 25%, and that helps massively by prioritizing and only deliver those things to the organization which creates the most value. On a daily basis, you work with your backlog, so you prioritize the most important stuff is at the top, and then the people knows and is aligned on what to work first and then second. On a weekly basis, review the backlog and decide what is now the highest value, or do an estimation of what creates the most value of all the tasks we have to accomplish. And on the monthly base, think about the purpose of your work. Is it aligned to what you are currently having in your backlog? Introduce the concept of yesterday's weather. So I take the capacity of the team, what they can deliver from the last 5 weeks in average. And that's what we are going to take in as work for the week from our backlog. And this helps massively to improve the forecast and expectation management from your stakeholders. Because I've seen teams, they had a capacity of 25 tasks, but management was pressuring them in delivering 100. But that team was stable for months and months, and that was just their capacity for the last 5-10 weeks. So in the end, they delivered 0, so even worse of their normal capacity. So don't pressure your team into delivering more, what they are just not capable. What we can do is decide how to use that capacity with our backlog and what should be done. And then the how is done by the team. Awesome. Now we have set up the team for a successful journey. So let's jump into the second category, where we talk about how to handle the most common problems your team will face. The first strategy is called swarming, and you know it from the one pit stop, where everyone helps to create the massive value as quick as possible by bringing out the Formula 1 race car back on track. So that's what we want to have as well. We are swarming, we bring in as much people as possible and needed to create value as quick as possible. On a daily basis, just think about limiting your work in process. So we have only little work in process, but this one we deliver and create value as quick as possible. On a weekly basis, for example, introduce pair programming sessions, or where 2 people just work together to finish a task as quick as possible. And on a monthly basis, introduce maybe dojos where your team improves their communication and their practices, and they are all swarming together on an example to improve their skills. Next thing is to introduce an interrupt buffer. So there's actually 3 decisions you can do when work is coming in ad hoc. First, you can say, yes, we are doing it immediately because it is something which is holding back the organization, or it creates massive stress for the customers. So a website which is not available when you're relying on your eShop, that's probably something ad hoc you want to do as quick as possible. The second option is you say like, yes, we are doing it, but we're doing it later. So you just put it in your backlog and prioritize the work for the next iterations. And third is you're saying like, no, sorry, this task we are not going to do because it's against our purpose, it's against our vision in our team and our organization. We're not going to do it because there's workaround available and the costs are just too high to implement that ad hoc thing. So on a daily basis, you would watch the interrupt buffer. Is it already filled up? So maybe you have a capacity of 25 and you decide, okay, we are only bringing in work for 20 and 5 is our buffer for ad hoc work. Then look how much is already used of that buffer. Because if the buffer is overflowing, then you just cancel what you're working on and you have to replan and inform management and your stakeholders accordingly that the buffer is overflown. And actually what it helps you is that people who are bringing in ad hoc, they have to decide, is that really something we need now ad hoc, or can we put it in the backlog and prioritize it? Because interruptions are not always helpful. And if you're working in a team where maybe you think 100% of our work is ad hoc because our customers are calling and they need help, yeah, then probably your ratio is much higher. So you have probably an interrupt buffer of 90% and you only plan 10% of your work. But this you can do on a monthly base, thinking about, okay, is that ratio accurate? And on a weekly base, you talk to stakeholders and mention that, oh, we have an interrupt buffer in place. So they are aware that not everything what is thrown to the team can be handled and delivered. The next strategy is called Good Housekeeping, and it's coming from Lean. And think about a production line you're facing and they want to maintain it clean every single day. So that's what you can do on a daily basis. Keep your product, keep your environment clean. On a weekly basis, build in quality every time you touch the product. So maybe you haven't touched the code lines for months, but now a bug occurred, and then you're just building in quality immediately with automated tests, and with that improving the quality of the whole product. And on a monthly base, maybe also introduce like refactoring or cleaning up your environments so they are staying lean and maintenance is easy and technical debt is kept to a minimum. Emergency procedures. Have you been on an aircraft? Probably yes. And when a problem comes up, you probably want to have the pilot to have an emergency procedure available. And this is what we want to have as well for your team. So have an emergency procedure, and we're having 4 steps. The first one is, if you're seeing that the work you committed to deliver cannot be delivered, maybe after half of the week you see like, there's no chance we can deliver this work, then change the way work is done. For example, introducing swarming so we can create value as quick as possible. And maybe with the new way of working, we then still can create the value. Second, we ask for help. So we are trying to offload part of our scope maybe to a neighboring team because we just cannot deliver it. If this is not possible, then we have to reduce scope because it seems like not realistic to deliver this kind of value we promised. And if this is not possible, then the 4th step is to cancel the work and replan, and we inform management again. So they are aware that not the whole scope can be delivered. Okay, so now your team can handle the most common problems it will face. And in the next category, we're helping your team to go from good to great. So the first step is to introduce retrospectives, because they will help your team immediately to go from good to great. So create a list of the impediments you're facing in your team and decide on one thing you want to remove by the end of the next iteration, so by end of next week. Or what are improvements you are having, and pick the improvement that will most enhance your team and implement that as quick as possible. So on a daily basis, think about the circle of control, influence, and concern. And most of the times teams will talk about what's in their concern, but that's not what we can change. So try to bring in what can we control as a team, as a single person, and what can we influence, and focus on those things we can do. On a weekly basis, introduce a retrospective, and on a monthly basis, maybe check your success jar. What have you accomplished? Because normally we only see small improvements step by step. I see it at my son. He's now 2.5 years old. And when I'm away for a couple of days and I come back and I see the massive improvements. But when I'm there for months and months, I don't see the gradual improvements. So it's good to look back and what are actually our successes. The next strategy is called finish early, accelerate faster. And I've seen it in many teams, and it's really interesting to see, because if you know your capacity, you should only bring in maybe between 80 to 120% of tasks for the next iteration. And if you pick a little bit less and then your team finishes early and then they are so motivated and self-driven that they will pull in more work. And it's really interesting pattern. Thanks to Jeff Sutherland, I came across this pattern that it's available because I've seen it work really well in the teams. So finish early, accelerate faster. And on a daily basis, you just can remember the phrase, stop starting, start finishing. On a weekly basis, have the capacity management in place and see what you can realistically pull in for work for the next week. And on a monthly basis, have knowledge sharing sessions or trainings to improve your capacity, and this will help you to go from good to great. The next strategy is called happiness index, and it goes very well with a retrospective. So just ask the team on a scale from 1 to 10, how happy are you currently here at the work in the team? From 1 really awful to 10, everything is awesome. And then choose one improvement that will make the team most energized. Because there's a nice saying, happy teams make better stuff faster. So on a daily basis, just smile, because the smiles will come back. And on a weekly basis, check your happiness index with the team, for example, in a retrospective. And on a monthly basis, maybe celebrate your successes in a party, or just look at your success jar and see what have you accomplished at a team, so you can relive what you have already done. And the cool thing about the happiness index, it's also a leading indicator. So when you introduce it and it's going down, then you still can change it and make changes before the productivity will drop. And the last strategy is to improve social connection, because Sean Aker said, if you are in the highest quartile of social connection, then your happiness and your productivity will skyrocket. So how can you do that? Introduce, for example, the 2-minute appreciation in your team, or on a weekly basis, do a lunch and learn session, or like when I did an internship in Australia, every Friday they were having a barbecue and a beer, and it just helped with creating a social connection in your team. And on a monthly basis, do a trip, like a hiking trip with your team, and to create this bonding in your team. Those were the 12 strategies, and I have one bonus, and he's called ELMO. And this is ELMO, and ELMO stands for Enough, Let's Move On. And you just bring him into the meeting, and it improves focus and also alignment to stay on the agenda. So introducing ELMO is a really cool concept to keep you focused. So please try out those strategies, and I'm happy to hear what strategy works best for your team. And if you like this video, you will love this video where I talk about 7 steps how to create an awesome work culture. And now I wish you an enjoyable and productive time. And always remember, you are awesome.